But today I want to ask you about your announcement on the water tax. And I noted once again you went to the media with this announcement, not in here to the Dáil to discuss it out. But let's be clear, from what we know, this is a water tax. It's Fianna Fáil policy. It's totally contrary to the stated policy of the Labour Party. It's the latest in a series of taxes which will impact most on low and middle income families who will at least have to pay, at the very, very least, €240 each year. At least 1 million households, Taoiseach, will be forced to pay this water tax despite having no meter. And the parties who support this, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour, must take full responsibility for the added tax burden that will now be placed on struggling households, on top of your family home tax, septic tank charge, carbon tax, cuts to child benefits, carers allowance and medical cards. Now, the media briefings from Minister Hogan, from yourself, from Labour, could be presented as a modern version of Dean Swift's A Modest Proposal. But there's nothing modest about your proposal and nothing eloquent about your media spin, or indeed nothing satirical, because you're deadly serious. Does Labour, does Fine Gael think that people are stupid? Do you think that people don't see what's happening? Do you think that people are fooled by the claims that you are making? And I think this shows just how far removed the government is from hard-working families and vulnerable citizens. So you know, whatever about Labour's position, you know that this fig leaf will not cover Labour's blushes. So, Taoiseach, isn't it the case that the Cabinet manoeuvring on recent weeks on this issue had nothing to do with relieving the burden on vulnerable citizens, or indeed about bringing about safe water and all of the other necessary services? Isn't it very clear that this was all about the elections and the public anger at the government's duplicity?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Well, I don't accept your charge at all, Deputy Adams. The government made a decision on this morning. We were accused by Fianna Fáil of not having the courage to spell out what the average charge would be and the conditions would apply to ameliorate that for certain sectors in our society. You, as I said last week, are party to decisions where water and water charges are part of the charges that people pay in Northern Ireland, but you refuse to acknowledge that. And I'm not sure if down here your presentation is that you pay for nothing, you contribute nothing, and that all these services are provided free of charge. Now, we've made it perfectly clear on a number of occasions that this is the last major imposition that the government will make.
Sorry, would you please? Thank you.
I also want you to understand, Deputy Adams, that in the discussions we've had over the last number of weeks, that this is an issue that people have taken very seriously and have engaged with constructively. What government have done here is to issue a direction to the regulator that the subvention of €537 million is conditional upon the average charge being €240 per year. That's €60 per quarter. And taking into account the difficulties and the hardship and the challenge that many people have, which I recognise. Clearly, there are sectors out there where there's a need for assistance to be given, and that assistance is being given in particular circumstances through the household benefit charge, those of carers with disability, blind people, and so on. But also taking into account the fact that children are obviously bring with them costs and charges in the daily running of every household. And so what's happened here is that government have provided extra assistance through the recognition of children being given a 38,000 litre allocation, which makes all children effectively free under the age of 18, and provides the extra €100 allowance for people in those categories that I've mentioned. That would mean that, let's say, a pensioner living on their own will have 40% of their water needs applied through the allocation free allocation of 30,000 litres, together with the extra allocation of €100, would mean that their charge, their payment for the year, would be approximately €138, or less than 50 cents a day. I think it's also obvious, Deputy Adams, which you don't ever want to recognise, that water is a precious and scarce enough resource, and we have to conserve it and use it well. It is probably the most abused natural resource in the country. But I think the fact that the metering itself brings with it an incentive to conserve. You can turn off the tap, and in that sense, the government have tried to make this as fair and as affordable and as incentivised as possible for people to understand that they are in control of this. So taking into account pensioners and elderly and those who receive benefits through the household benefits package, the extra €100 allocation will be to their benefit. And in addition to that, the government will also make available assistance for exceptional cases, as applies currently for electricity and for gas, where that need arises.
Thank you.
So the intention here, Deputy Adams, is to deal with a situation where 40% of the water produced is leaking away. That's costing €1.2 billion a year to the Irish taxpayer. We have inferior treatment works, inferior pipe work. We have people, 23,000 on boil water notices. This needs to be dealt with, and we've tried to make this contribution as fair and as equitable as possible, and far from the 2,000-3,000 figures that are being bandied about. This is the lowest point that we can bring it to without having to put it back on the government's on the government books. And in that sense, the assistance made by government decision this morning of both the Fine Gael party and the Labour Party is to make that as fair and as equitable and as incentivised for conservation as is possible.
Deputy Adams.
Thank you. Taoiseach, there's nothing in your proposal about conserving water, and you haven't spelled out what you will do if people don't pay this tax. I mean, listen to yourself. Listen to what you're saying. You may as well be standing or sitting there as naked as the day you were born, like the Emperor, thinking no one's noticing. You might as well be sitting there, Taoiseach, just thinking that people are absolute amadons.
Questions, please. Thank you.
Working people who are going to pay this, aren't laughing today. They don't think it's funny. They think it's very, very, very serious, on top of a whole series of punitive taxes, totally contrary to your election promises. Sinn Féin consistently and resolutely opposed the imposition of a water tax on already hard-pressed families. Sinn Féin prevented a water tax in the north. You know that.
Please.
You know that Sinn Féin prevented a water tax in the north, but you continue to mislead the Dáil on that issue.
Sorry, Deputy,
you could have done the same thing here. And you're dishonest in claiming that Uisce Éireann or Irish Water can tell householders how much they will pay for water over the next few years, because your proposals only bring us to 2016, just in time for the rising.
Could you put your supplementary, please?
The tax will increase, and you know that. You know it will increase.
Deputy, I have to ask you, would you please adhere to the chair?
Thank you.
So, doesn't all of this expose the fact, I'm finished now, Concordia, that your government continues, even at this stage, to mislead citizens on this water tax issue in an effort to get through the election?
Taoiseach, 1 minute, thank you.
You accused the government on many occasions in here of not having the courage to spell out the details of what is involved before the local and the European elections. Well, you've been proven wrong in that case, Deputy Adams. Now, meters are a conservation measure because people, and you've referred to insinuated in some way that people are amadons or stupid, which I disregard completely. It's beneath you to actually say that. And it's beneath you, as you would often say, to put words in anybody else's mouth. So you can withdraw that remark in respect of everybody in the House here. The Irish people are well able to make up their own minds. So in respect of meters and water meters, we have evidence from many places around the country where private group schemes metered their houses and metered the extent of water going in, and you can measure the conservation. We've been very pleased with the results in terms of saving huge quantities and volumes of water. For people who decide not to pay, and this is not fair to all of those people who are hard-pressed who do make a contribution. And while water is very necessary for life, fundamentally, people are not going to have their water connection cut off, but there will be a case of reduced pressure where people decide not to pay. Yes, because you'd be the first up on your feet saying you cannot cut them off completely, nor is there any intention. But if we're to have a contribution from everybody with assistance for those who are in particular need here, the answer to your question is that the penalty is reduced pressure. Any review of the average meter charge is deferred until 2016. Now you say that that's running until after the next election. Yes, it is, and far be it from me to determine what the people will want to do with their votes in 2016 when they come to judge this government as to whether it's fulfilled its mandate of sorting out our public finances and getting our country working or not. So the question for a review will be carried out by whatever government is elected by the people after the general election in 2016. This government has taken all of these things into account. As I said, it's the last major issue imposed on the people. It's been known to be coming for quite some time, and in so doing we've taken into account children, the elderly, the vulnerable, the disabled, the blind, those who are on boiled water notices, those who receive household benefits through the household package, and provision for those where exceptional hardship or exceptional circumstances arise. And in that sense, not only will it deal with the inadequacy of the system at the moment, it will provide a platform for provision of high quality, high volume, pristine water for generations to come, which is what is necessary to do, and governments in the past shirked their responsibility in facing up to that. This government will not, and has been as fair and as affordable to the people as is possible.